going over one of the projects we have in the shop, which is an old friend of ours. One of our good buddies, Jeff, has been messing with this F80 M3 for a number of years now. We've had it in and out of the shop. Haven't really documented much on it, but this time we're going to go through some of the stuff we're doing for some winter off-season upgrades. This car has actually taken a lot of our core approach to some things already with MCS dampers. Currently has two-way remotes on it, has our TA16 wheels, 275 size tires all around for a square setup. A couple other little goodies, but Jeff wants to make it a little bit faster. Who doesn't want to do that? So this year we've got kind of the group of what we're going to throw onto this thing, and really it's been a lot of fun to work on this car. Obviously we've got the GTMore, which is the all-out, end-all, be-all, fast as can be F8X car. You know, if you want to do all the things, that's what you do. But this thing has really followed a recipe of being more of that street track car with a track focus. This thing's definitely got a track focus to it, but really has that dual purpose car in mind. You know, you don't see the big splitter that's hanging just a couple inches off the ground. That's a struggle to get into in and out of parking lots. You know, you don't have to do the GTMore to do a really effective fast F80 or F82. We've got our 18x10 wheels on it with 275 size tires, as I mentioned, and one of the things he wanted to do was increase the width, increase the size of rubber that's going on it. And yeah, you got the GTMore that can do 315s all around, but like I mentioned, this is not really the car for that totally, so you can still squeeze a lot of tires. So we're gonna widen it up a little bit with a set of 18 by 10.5 ET36 TA8S wheels. That felt like a mouthful. To ultimately be able to throw 295 size tires on it. Got a couple different tires he's gonna use for a couple different types of conditions, tracks, and really just get that extra width to improve that grip that he ultimately wants to help improve that lap time. Then we've got a few maintenance things we're doing on the car. Always good maintenance, winter off season. Oil change with, of course, Redline oils. We've got Redline DCTF, gonna do a transmission service on this thing. You know, we know that from our years running the GT4s in IMSA and SRO that running that DCTF actually did provide a noticeable benefit in helping cool the trans. And then we're gonna do diff fluid, Redline 75-140 in the diff, brake fluid change. And then we're gonna do some more fun stuff. Not that maintenance isn't fun, keeps your car on the road, on the track, but who doesn't wanna add a little bit of power to their car? So engine intake to help this thing breathe a little bit better on the front end. And then our GTMore catback system to help this thing breathe a little bit better on the back end. Not doing the full GTMore system because this car still has cats, titled, registered, EPA compliant. So gonna add a little bit of volume to it and also add a little bit of power. Also gonna do a tune. Motiv Motorsports is gonna help us out with the software calibration on this. We're gonna get it on the dyno, figure out what it makes baseline, figure out where it lands with the additional power adders. Adding power always comes at some level of cost, and in the S55 engine, it always seems like that cost is, do I need to address the crank hub issue or not? And probably a good idea too. I know some people think it's a myth, but we are going to hit this with the Vargas spline lock solution. Got that baby here. So that's what we're gonna do for the crank hub in this thing. Also gonna hit the Vargas crank, excuse me, Bolt. Also gonna hit a little bit of a security measure by adding the Vargas crank seal guard in the front, which when you throw a belt on these things, the chances of the belt getting ingested into the front main seal is a real worry. So this helps eliminate that possibility. Our BimmerWorld fuel starvation kit. So that's also going in this thing. So anyways, got all these parts down here. Now we need to get them back up to the shop and get started working on this bad boy.
Dave, his natural habitat.
So Dave's been over there working on this GT4 project. We got other things going on, we'll talk about that. But Dave has also been working on this F80 car that we've been hitting on. Rich is over here cranking away on getting the fuel starvation kit in. Looks like he has gotten the extra pump fished over the other side, working on routing some wires, getting everything secured, about to get some wiring action going on. A little bit easier time to do in this because it's an F80, so 4 doors. versus when I had a jungle gym around the GTMore in the coupe. Other thing going on, we've got the front end torn apart a little bit because we are doing the Vargas blind lock crank hub. So Dave has been cranking away on this thing. I kind of made him pause so that I could actually get some footage of this because he probably would have already had it back together. This thing, about to get put back together. Gonna do the crank guard seal as well and the crank capture plate just as a little extra measure of precaution. And then get this baby buttoned up and be ready to get it tuned, make a little bit more power, also putting those engine intakes on there, and hopefully have some spicier results here for you soon.
Cranking away those crank ups, huh? Crank, 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 cranking.
How long are you gonna be?
No.
Hurry up. I got stuff to film.
Alright, let me do one more pass over.
Continue to make progress on this F80 engine intake installed. Everything's buttoned up now. We did fresh fluids everywhere. Redline diff fluid, redline DCTF trans fluid. Right now, Dave is working on getting ISTA up and running so that we can do the complete transmission service, flush, that whole deal. And look at it, all buttoned up, almost ready to go back on the dyno. Also fresh oil, redline fluids, of course. And next step is transmission service, get it back on the dyno. We're gonna do also a baseline with just the engine intakes with the stock software, and then we'll see where it lands once we tune it up a little bit with our friends from Motiv Motorsports doing some tuning. After that, time to fit some wider wheels and tires on this thing, get it set up. We also hit some other general maintenance on this car that we didn't hit in the intro of the video. Wheel bearings, front rotors, and while doing rear wheel bearings, you know, we didn't do this initially on the car when we first had it, but because it was time to do wheel bearings, we went ahead and upgraded the rear hubs to this GT4 Evo upgrade rear hub. This is a factory one. You see, it looks cool because it's lightweight and has all these cutouts and whatnot. However, looks like this is a cast piece and it can get a little bit fragile and break apart. We've seen these things break apart, had issues with stud failures from them as well. This, a much thicker forged piece, so just a lot stronger to give a lot more reliability as these things see a lot of abuse on track. So if you are due for a wheel bearing change on your F8X car, probably a good idea, especially if you track it, to go ahead and upgrade to this GT4 Evo hub. That's where we're at with this thing. Looking forward to getting back on the dyno. I'm gonna start going into these intros in song. Back in the dyno room with this F80 again. Now we have the crank hub stuff done, all that's installed, and we also have added engine intakes to this system. Let it breathe a little bit better on the front end. You know, we've done all the GTMore catback exhaust stuff on this. Now allowing it to breathe a little bit better on the front side. Gonna go ahead and do some baseline dyno runs with the engine intake, and then we're gonna get this baby tuned up a little bit with our friends from Motiv Motorsports and see what kind of power it'll make. So let's get at it. Baseline run's complete, everything checks out, all good. The engine intake makes a little bit more power over the stock intake, which is awesome as really factory intakes work really well. So to make more power from an aftermarket intake, pretty awesome. Really where it starts to shine though is once you are trying to increase the boost and really increase the flow in and also with the exhaust going out. Now looking at this graph, you can see we made baseline 448, 433, 448 wheel horsepower, baseline, we made 448 wheel horsepower and 433 foot-pounds of torque with just the catback, 447 wheel horsepower, 444 foot-pounds of torque, about 11 foot-pound increase in torque, and really it was a 10 to 12 to even more than that on the torque, 10 to 12 horsepower increase across the whole range. Now, add the intake, 456 wheel horsepower, 458 foot-pounds of torque. So you can really see it added a nice chunk here in the low end. Also breathes a little bit better up top and kind of hung in the mid-range about where the exhaust was. But now time to tune this thing up and really take advantage of some of these modifications that will let this engine breathe much better. Just got finished with all the tuning stuff on this thing and it's pretty spicy. So ended up making 488 wheel horsepower, 519 foot-pounds of torque, which if you only look at the peak numbers against the horsepower, 448 wheel horsepower was our baseline, stock everything. That seemed like, okay, cool, you got 40 horsepower, but really you like start looking in this meat of the range right around here. It's over 90 wheel horsepower gain at 5,200 RPM and 90 foot-pounds of torque. No, that's, yeah, 90. I can do math. So big gains in the meat of the range, which you really want on track. Now, could have turned this thing up a bit further, didn't want to because this is a track-focused car. We can get these things to make Dyno Queen power numbers, big numbers, pump them up. But for track use, the intention is for this thing to be reliable, consistent, have fun all day beating on your car at the track. So thanks to the guys at Motiv Motorsports for providing software for this car, and I know that Jeff is going to be ecstatic and love how this thing feels once he gets it on track. The next thing to do to finish this thing up will be to fit the wheels and tires and do the final setup on the car before it heads to its next track outing. So gonna get this thing unstrapped, take it up to the lift, fit the wheels and tires, 10.5 square, 295 size tires on this thing, what we're about to squeeze on it. And yeah, do the setup work and kick it out the door to go have some fun on track. Off the dyno, now onto the setup phase. You can see this difference here equals more meat under the car, gonna give us some more grip, give Jeff some more grip. So these were 275s, pretty easy fit, 1810s, pretty standard, no real modifications needed, and really no massive modifications needed for this type of tire where you're going with something wider. These are TA8S 10.5-inch wheels with 295 size tires. And we're gonna squeeze these things under here. I say no major modifications, but really the modification is just camber. So you gotta have a healthy amount of negative camber to be able to squeeze these things under here. But other than that, they do fit relatively easily. Not the big GTMore 315 setup, but like we mentioned, this car, still a street car, still catted and made that much power, so pretty impressive. And now let's get moving to the setup phase and get this, get these big tires on there. Does require a good bit of negative camber to fit these things, as I mentioned, but no body modifications, front or rear, and everything is tucked away super nicely under this thing to fit 295s, which is a pretty impressive size tire. Still plenty of tire for this car. And now, I think we're onto the setup phase, the final touches, put the BimmerWorld touch on this thing with some of the setup things that we like to do on these cars. So looking forward to getting that done, and that kind of about wraps this project up. Gonna head back to its owner here maybe tomorrow, but I talked to Jeff earlier today actually, and he's super excited about all the things we did to this thing, getting into the track. Looks like we're gonna be able to spend some time with him at the track at a couple events this year, so looking forward to that and seeing this thing and get Jeff's impressions of it. Kind of did a good chunk of things to this thing. Wheels, tires, intake, exhaust, tune, crank hub, GT4 Evo rear hubs, fresh front rotors. Little winter maintenance project turned into some fun projects, which we're certainly fans of here. We like making these things fun. That about wraps up this one here.
You ready to go?
Should be an awesome race weekend. We are ready to kill it this year. It's going to be a wild ride.